Hey all, welcome to Training with Kayce. I'm your host, Kayce Cover, and I have, you know how they say an idle mind is the devil's workshop? Well, I don't know what a churning mind is, but that's what I have. And it may be the devil's workshop anyway. So why has my mind been churning? Well, I've been really thinking about some critical subjects lately and recognizing that I have developed through training to totally different positions than I initially had. So let's say what some of those are. One is punishment, one is cognition, one is targeting, one is mental mapping. And I think, I think that trainers are leaving a lot of money on the table. And I also think that we're on the verge of a huge level of breakthrough. Huge level. Gosh, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Let's talk, just touch base on a couple of them. So, when we do perception modification, where we can solve all kinds of problems, anything that is emotion or perception mediated. So that's phobias, arousal, hyperesthetics, phobias, you name it. And we can solve all those things with perception modification. And we can do it in an average of about 15 hours and sometimes much less. I've seen it take as little as 13 minutes to affect a lasting change with an animal, a change that totally redefined the animal's life. And what's really amazing about it is the animal is self-managing. How do we do this? I asked myself, because when we started, I in no way imagined that this is how it would work. Yeah, I have to stop and write more notes. We got dopamine and then serotonin and then intrinsic motivation. So, quiz question, which would you rather have? A dog that does something because he wants to do it, or a dog that does something because he's afraid you're going to make him do it anyway? What are the benefits to an animal being self-managing? Woo! That's, I mean, how can you even count them, right? But let me just take a little look. So we're just going to kind of play tonight and touch base on things that we can develop later. But I mean, all of these things have come rushing in at once. And I just keep writing more of them down. Here's another one, polyvagal nerve therapy. Okay, so in this perception modification, we start out, we never, from the very beginning, we never use punishers to change the animal's behavior. We never use food. We never use toys. What do we use? We use the thing the animal doesn't want. We use the thing the animal doesn't want to get him to change his behavior. And at first, the animal doesn't want it. Go figure. Sorry, guys, I'm writing more notes down. Okay, so then, that's why we call it perception modification. As we do this work, the animal is studying what's in it for me. How does changing this affect my experience with life? So we can't answer that for the animal, but the animal can answer it for themselves. And didn't I just say that we fix it normally in 15 hours approximately? So within 15 hours, the animal tends to become self-managing. In other words, he is now fixing the problem himself for his own reasons. How can you not want that? I mean, gosh, this could really impact board and train models. SATS trainers, pay attention. You can do it faster. You don't have to take 2 or 3 weeks. Remember, people are paying for relief. If you can supply that relief faster, you're off to the races. Okay, so at a very rapid time, really, we have the animal working for himself for totally intrinsic reinforcers. Now, I wouldn't want you to think that it's so very simple as all that, because we have classes and we spend a lot of time on a lot of interesting stuff. And if you're a student of the game, you're going to want to master this stuff. You're going to want to understand what's happening and why it's happening and how it's happening. I mean, this is our playground, right? And as you're studying this, you are going to see how limited the understanding of many people is. Now, it's not necessarily, that it's one kind of trainer or one particular trainer, but how many times have you heard the idea of start with a high value reinforcer? Okay, have you heard that? Yeah, I have too. And blow it off, because there's no such thing. There's no such thing. Anything you want to throw out there that animal is going to love can get spoiled in seconds so that it no longer works. And we can take things that the animal doesn't want and set things up so the animal works for those things. So the idea that a punisher is aversive and a reinforcer is something the animal desires, you better look into that. And I think it's really interesting because people that are setting themselves up to be experts in this field will tell you, a reinforcer is something the animal desires. No, it's not. It's something that a trainer can use effectively to increase the frequency of a behavior that it immediately follows. Okay? So the simplest definition of a reinforcer is it increases the frequency of the behavior it immediately follows. Doesn't have to be something the animal likes. And a punisher doesn't have to be something the animal dislikes. It just has to reduce the frequency of the behavior it immediately follows. So it either ups it or downs it right after it happens. Okay, you have to have that contingency. It has to be, the animal does this, you do this, and what's the effect of the behavior immediately after that? So a lot of times we don't know that, right? How do you know that? You can't sit there in our ivory towers and pronounce by looking at, okay, now the animal will do that more. No, you have to ask for the behavior and count. Does the animal do it more? You have to prove. You can't. And even Skinner made this mistake. So I'm a language nerd. Okay, I claim it. When I say I'm a language nerd, I've got the test scores to prove it. Got an 800 on my SAT verbal, okay? And I got in the 99 percentiles for all these different language tests for graduate school. And yeah, right for me, right? But here's the thing. This is something I understand and know about. And we have a lot of sloppy habits. I mean, I do too, right? What I know, what I can go through and parse is different than what I actually say, right? And just if we're hanging out together and so on, I'll say something sloppy, and I hope you'll catch me in it. And we'll have a discussion. I love discussions. As long as we can be respectful, we can explore things, and it makes life rich, and we learn so much. Okay, so let's get back to it. When it comes to defining terms, you got to be consistent. Your rationale has to be consistent. So Skinner said you can't conjecture about what happens in the animal's brain. Okay, so I'm paraphrasing. You have to count what actually happens. And then he says the reinforcer increases the probability. Probability is an unexpressed potential. Frequency is the expressed actuality. That's what it should be. And it never should have been punisher. I think you've heard me say this before. The term should have been diminisher. And punisher, reinforcer and diminisher are opposing concepts. So a reinforcer increases the frequencies of the behavior it immediately follows, and a diminisher decreases the frequency of the behavior it immediately follows. And it's erroneous. You don't know what the animal likes anyway. Okay, you may think you do, and you may judge that you just gave the animal the best reinforcer possible. But there's so many ways that it can get more complex than that. So many ways. And folks, if you are not aware of this, man, get to the table and get in a discussion, because we create the reinforcers. We don't go to the store and get a reinforcer. In general, we create them. And if you are not creating your own reinforcers, as I said before, you're leaving money on the table. Ask yourself right now, have you created reinforcers with animals before that had nothing to do with toys or food? Can you work an animal without food? Now, do you have to work animals without food? Usually, no. And I think it's perfectly great to use food. But I don't want to be limited so that I only train if I have food. And the way we get around that can be so much fun and so interesting. All right, so start out with reinforcer versus punisher and how the language misdirects us. It kind of distracts us. When somebody says, start out with a high value reinforcer, they're sending you in the wrong direction. Okay? I would much rather they say, create a strong reinforcer. Well, let me ask you another thing. When we're talking about reinforcers, think of your own experience. What is the perfect reinforcer for you? No, I mean, right this minute. Okay, so now think of the best reinforcer you can think of. And now go back to when you were 5 years old. Was that a good reinforcer for you? Was it a good reinforcer for you when you were 12 years old? When you were 16? How about when you're not hungry? How about on Mondays when you had to leave your weekend? All right, so we need to think much more fluidly about this culture we create with the animals. You're not stuck in something where you've got, I'm going to have to get chicken, maybe chicken livers, and one squeeze toy, and la, 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 or else I can't train animals. And then I have to put on the thinking cat. No, you don't have to do any of that. It's you and the animal. If you are a master trainer, what a crazy term is that? But you get the gist, right? In other words, would they call it in the trades a journeyman? No, it's a master, right? Well, anyway, somebody informed me. I obviously need more education, even though it is a word thing. Okay, so when you just understand working with animals and creating and applying reinforcers and punishers, you're not limited to what's in your refrigerator. And that's a good thing. Now, think about the implications of that. What you create with the animals you work with is between you and them alone. So what I mean is, I'll take dogs that want to chase cats, and I will show them why they want to change the way they interact with cats. And next thing you know, these dogs are they're managing their arousal levels around cats. And then I say to them, well, since you can manage yourself around cats, let's go look for cats. Whoa, they love that. They love that. I do too. I make sure it's fun for both of us and challenging and interesting. I will compete with the dog. I don't want to be bored and just walk around with the dog goes, there's a cat, there's a cat, there's a cat. No, it's mano a mano or mana a mano or whatever, because I am in the game. I'm looking for cats too. And if I get the cat and the dog doesn't, I am It's like, dog, If you had it going on, you would have noticed that cat on top of the roof. So the dog loves it. I love it. We have a good time. That good time extends much longer in the animal's experience and in his memory than the instant over which the piece of cheese or liver crossed his saliva traps, right? And nobody else knows how to access that place with the dog. Anybody can give the dog cheese, but not everybody can take the dog cat hunting. And think about your own life. What are the most fun things you do? So it's really nice to go out for dinner. But if all I did was go out for dinner, I would not consider that a great vacation. I want to have new and interesting experiences. I want to have fun with significant people. I want to enjoy time inside my family culture with people I trust and I'm comfortable with. And just think of it this way too. Do you want to go on vacation all by yourself? Do you want to travel totally solo? It's a lot more fun, I think, to go with other like-minded people. My friends, my significant other, my family. So don't underestimate the treasure that you're creating when you develop this bonding with your animals, whether it's a dog or a horse or whatever. The games that you play, the experiences you have, the jokes, the learning together. This is all the stuff that a good life is made of. Now, another important thing that we can bring the animals is choice. Self-direction is a huge welfare bonus. So, all things being equal, if I bring the animal its favorite food, that is not as strong as if I give the animal the opportunity to choose her favorite food. So, one of the videos that I found really interesting is the video with Sarah. What do you prefer on your apple slices? Okay. And it was very interesting to me because Sarah really enjoys spices. She really enjoys them. And you see, she gets really interested in it. So she likes apples and she likes apples plain, but she really likes to put spices on them. And she doesn't have a single favorite spice. The one that she seems to always ask for is cloves. But then sometimes she'll pick cinnamon over cloves or ginger over cloves, but generally she wants cloves. When I looked it up, cloves has specific benefits. It may not just be a flavor thing. Cloves can relieve pain, for example. So I have no idea if there's ulterior motives for picking cloves, but that's a favorite. And it's such a pleasure to be able to offer that. And it's something that I try to do. I'm constantly looking up on, the ASPCA animal toxicity list, for example. What is okay for the dogs or the cat or the horse to eat and what isn't? and then letting them try it. And I have to be really careful because, for example, onions are really good for humans. They are not good for horses. They are not good for dogs. I can't remember if they're good for cats or not. And another one is avocados, very good for us, not good for dogs, not good for horses, as I recall. So, on the other hand, sweet potatoes, greens, are very good for horses, and they're very good for us, not good for dogs. So, I will take sweet potato greens over to the horses and let them choose, do you want to eat this? And they come right over, they're interested, but it's not, I don't make it a regular part of their food. I don't have enough of them to, give it all the time, but also I want to keep some things as special opportunities. So we'll develop that more as time goes on, but I find it really interesting. Okay, so choice is really important, and we can um, add that into our training culture. You can add explanations. Oh my gosh, where self-direction is, welfare enhancing, agency enhancing. I mean, let the animal create their own life as much as we can. Give them options. See what they choose. Give them the opportunity to choose. But in addition to choice, you've got, I often call it the keys to the kingdom, empowering the animal to be a collaborator, to be a participant at the table. It's like, okay, I'm not quite sure how to get at this idea, but let's take the crab Spike. He got excited about training. And I just found out, I just read about this. I didn't realize how excited he may have gotten because we kept them in the dark because in the ocean he would live in the dark. And when I would turn on the lights in the lab, Spike would be sitting there doing this with his pinchers, kind of like the wave at the stadium with the lobster, the crab, the hermit crab, or whatever at Ariel, right? The Disney princess thing. Okay. So that has to do with sexual, like, courtship kind of thing. Very interesting. So maybe Spike wasn't, maybe there's some variation amongst crabs or something, but makes you wonder. It's like when an animal is happy about something or excited about something, it kind of makes sense that they're going to naturally express themselves in the way that they know how. Whatever's meaningful in their biology and so on and so forth. Anyway, I'd turn on the light and here'd be Spike. And then I have on Alia.com/press, you scroll down and you're going to see Spike working with me. And I had to put him in a bowl and move him over to a microscope to observe his carapace. And he couldn't move backwards very easily. And instead, he would go from side to side. And I'd kind of just move the bowl with him until he managed to get inside of it. And he grew a fair amount. And when he first started, he could easily fit inside the bowl. And at the end, he had to put his little swimmerettes on the outside of the bowl because he could not fit all the way in. But he did all that. And then I could carry him around the lab, him perched on the edge of his bowl. It's like he didn't try to leave or anything like that. He just He bought into the program. So one day I went in and Spike, instead of backing into the bowl, grabbed onto my finger and I went, "Ah!" And then I realized, ooh, that's really bad. He lets me carry him around. I don't even trust him to put his pincher on my finger. So I got some courage and I put my hand in again. And it was almost like Spike was hoping for the opportunity. He came right up and he put his pincher on my finger. He didn't like try to pinch me or anything. He just held on enough that he could pull himself straight into the bowl. Straight into the bowl. Amazing. Amazing. It's like he realized, he figured out there was a better way to do that. He changed our technique. He changed our protocol. He had a better idea, but he had to have a way to show us the better idea. And then we had to have a way to recognize it and to, bring it into our culture. And it gets to be nuanced and subtle to do this stuff. But first, we have to set up the culture where this change and exchange and sharing can occur. And there's a few things that in setting up those cultures we need to do. First of all, they're based on sharing to begin with. Secondly, they have to be based on respect. There must be respect. If you don't respond in kind, if I expect Spike to trust me to carry him around in a bowl, and then I don't trust him to put his pincher on my finger, he's going to know that. He's going to see that he's classified as other. He doesn't have the same rank as I do. And I think that's a terrible thing. I think that's a terrible thing. I may be the person that has to enforce certain rules, but I am, and I want to be a partner with my animals. I don't want to be the master and they're the servant. And I'll tell you, I think that a huge reason for this is the perception modification tools and empowerment. But the animals that I have known have fortunately tended to have very long lifespans compared to others of their kind. I'm so grateful for that. And I surely want to invest in creating a life with the animal that they want to be part of, that they want to, stay in and share with me. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about punishers, reinforcers, and some other things like that. I'm going to take a minute and review my notes here. Okay, so a huge part of our culture can be based on sharing information. When we share information about how things work and what they are, all of a sudden, the animal is more empowered. He has more agency. He understands more. I mean, imagine if you were like in house arrest in another country, and it wouldn't really matter how luxurious the conditions were. You probably wouldn't want to be under house arrest in another country. And imagine if you didn't speak the language of the people that were keeping you. And then imagine if one of the people that was, your steward, taking care of you and so on, if that person came and started explaining to you the language of this foreign country and the customs and the law, what if they explained to you what caused you to get detained? What if they explained to you how you could get out of detention and how you could avoid it in the future? What if they opened a whole new world for you, with you, where you could have a free, open life like any other citizen? It would all be good, right? Well, this is what we do for animals, or we can do it. So, how do we do it? Well, one of the things that I think is really important is to teach the animals consciously. So, operant conditioning is based on unconscious learning. And it works great, it gets you home while you're commuting and things like that. But it's not good enough. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know who said this initially, but the quote sticks in my mind: the unexamined life is not worth living. We need to see what we're doing and why we're doing it and figure out if we want to continue to do that or do something different. Would we make our lives better if we change something? But we can't do that if we're always on autopilot. How do we get off of autopilot? By asking questions. It's the same for the animals. When I'm going to teach an animal a concept like left versus right, it just takes 1 minute. It only takes a few trials. And I don't know who in the world started this thing that you have to get 7 or 8 repetitions that are correct in a row before you can change anything. Man, I don't go by that at all. I only get, literally, I'll do no more than 3 presentations of an opposing concepts, two concepts that are opposite. And that works great. And we create this vocabulary, and then we continue to develop the animal's understanding of the 2 new concepts, but also how they relate to all of the other concepts the animals already learned. This is so empowering. It's so much fun. It's empowering and fun for both of us. And then we'll go out and apply it. So, for example, if I say, okay, can you walk? Good. You're walking. That's great. Now, can you walk while you hold up your right front paw? And the dog probably can't do that easily at first. And we're asking to do it consciously, which is probably harder at first, because I've known some experienced, capable trainers that could get a limp very quickly by putting a rubber band around a dog's leg. But I don't want to do that. I want the dog to understand the concept of limp and to be able to do it himself. Why not, right? Why not? It's more fun. It's more fun to figure it out together. So we start out by teaching using targets, and then we create vocabulary, and we do this with pairs of opposing concepts or different objects. And as we keep building this, we keep cross-relating everything. So the animal understands how to integrate all these ideas. And they're getting a richer and richer like sense of the world. And we can talk about it. So my dog, King the Wonder Dog, I could send him up into the barn loft and tell him what tool I needed him to bring, because I'd already taught him the name of all the tools. And you can see plenty of this if you go to YouTube/C, youtube.com/C/Kayce Cover. That's my channel. And I've got videos of Sarah naming all kinds of stuff. And even if you just go on the press page, then alia.com/press, scroll down, and you'll see 3 communication videos with Sarah. And if you really sit there and think about what's going on there, it blows my mind. If it doesn't blow yours, tell me what does, because I'll be curious to hear some other great things. Anyway, so we teach and share information, and we empower the animals at the same time. We give them more agency, we give them more choice, we give them more experiences, we give them more understanding, and we extend that understanding to how, yeah, I mean, just think of it. If you have one thing that you understand, and now all of a sudden you have 25 things, and also you understand how all 25 of those things interrelate, that's a richer world. In fact, recently I saw somebody, and it's great. I mean, it's a great idea, but they were excited because somebody had taught horses to go up to a device. It's kind of like a big board that you would mount on a fence or wall, and the horses could state whether or not they wanted a blanket. I'm all about that. I think that's great. But that's the only thing that that device was good for. So let me give you an alternative. Do you want a blanket tonight? Yes or no? Horse says yes. Do you want your light or your heavy blanket? And the horse says heavy. And then maybe you say, do you want the heavy fluffy blanket or the heavy canvas blanket? And the horse answers whatever they want. Sheesh, that's easy. It's very easy. And you can use the same binary toggle using your thumb and your little finger any place you go. You don't have to have a computer. You don't have to control the light source, because if you're using a computer, the animal can't even see the screen in real daylight. It's not complicated. You don't have to build anything. And yeah, it's easy. Now, the part that's not easy is you have to be able to think in terms of how to ask questions, how to set up the choices, because there's lots of little things that go on in these easy exchanges. But it's a lot easier to learn how to do this well than it is to build 25 different things that you have to put on the wall that give the animal one choice. So embrace the idea, but maybe expand the way you do it with the animal. Okay, so I talked about when we started out with the perception modification, we were using dopamine to reinforce the animals. And we evolved past that. And we evolved to the point where the animals didn't choose the dopamine themselves anymore. And on the way to, on this pathway, the animals also have learned so many things about their environment, and they're managing themselves, and they are seen as full members of the team, yeah, it's really good. This is a great way to be interacting with the animals. And it's also great because we all have our off days, our off weeks, our off years. And I often say to Sarah, I'm sorry, your other left or your other right, because I get them messed up. So when we elevate the way we work with the animals and we, you know, share respect with them, recognize when they're correct, even if I'm not correct. I just apologize if I get it wrong. And Sarah will give me this look, but also I ask permission before I do things. I don't just generally reach out to do something. Oh, that is so important. Because if I tell Sarah, may I clean your eye? I'll tell her which side, and she'll just move her head and just sit there like this, waiting for me to clean her eye. And then I'll say, okay, your other eye, and she'll turn and let me clean that one. But if I just reach out and go to clean her eye like she's not in there, like it's not her eye, and I can just, finger her face whenever I want to, she'll pull her head away with a little bit of like, what is going on with you? Well, she deserves to be, sovereign over her own body. And where we need to negotiate about it, we can negotiate. So that's the next thing I was going to say. When you share information and concepts and vocabulary, is the total game changer, because now we can negotiate with the animal. Oh my God, I just did a podcast on training. I'm sorry, on punishment. And right after I did it, I was thinking about like, there's more that I need to process about punishment. Well, here's what it is in a nutshell. I'm going to do more podcasts on punishment, or at least that's my plan. But what we do now, I don't even know how to explain it. So I'm going to do my best right now. I know some people would call this an antecedent. I'm not a big fan of the ABC, antecedent behavior consequence. I think it is a little simplistic. I think it's a good place to start. And it's good to be aware that we need to set animals up for success in the training session and so forth. But here's the problem. In real life, it's not, we will now work on sit. So I'm going to set everything up so the animal's going to sit. And now the animal sits. And then I say, good, that was a good sit. And now we're done. Or now we go on to the next behavior, which is place. And I set up blah, blah. No, it's much more like this. All right, do you remember targeting your bum? And you can target it up, and that's stand. You can target it onto the ground, and that's sit. If your bum and your chest are on the ground, can you do that? Good. That is down. And if they're both up, that is stand. Can you do those for me? Good. So you've got bow, stand, sit, down. Good. And you go through the whole process. And we're using the opposing concepts to help the animal understand the material we're covering. And they do it so quickly. I remember teaching gorillas and orangutans about metal versus plastic and spoons versus forks. And I would say in about 5 minutes, they had it wired. They could pick out the metal, they could pick out the plastic, they could identify spoons, they could identify forks, and they could even they were starting to be able to count them. Can you show me which one has 2 spoons? Can you show me which one has 1 spoon and 1 fork, etc.? So now I just lost my train of thought. See, I really wish we could all just be talking together instead of me doing a podcast, because then you could just yell out, yeah, you were saying blah, blah, blah. And we could share ideas and discussion instead of me having to just do it all by myself. What's wrong with you guys? You should be more supportive. All right, so okay. So what I was saying is that we're talking about a stream of behavior. And we're talking about a concept that just got defined for me by a respected colleague in Australia. It's Chris Katsopoulos. And he heard it from John Soares, and the term is reflexivity. Reflexivity is that ability to interact dynamically with an animal for the optimal outcome. And it's not, you can't set up one thing from the beginning because so many things are going to happen. You have to kind of just flow through the situation. It's kind of like when you first start out learning to dance, maybe they teach you a folk dance. Heel, toe, slide, 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 heel, toe, slide, 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 do-si-do, 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 turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around, heel, toe, etc., right? And that is a simple dance that everybody learns what to expect, and they can all do it together without careening into each other. But when I used to dance in little competitions, right, for young people that were doing swing dancing, well, you didn't plan the whole dance ahead of time. It was a spontaneous reaction to the music. And, a lot of times you just knew what the other person was going to suggest, and you both just flowed into it. And that was a lot of the fun of it. The fun was being fluent and fluid and being able to make the most of the music and, whatever happened, like maybe other people moved into your space and you had to do something else. Well, that's what training is at its best. It is a dance. It's a dance and the communication. With dance, the communication is music and timing and cues between one another and work that you did ahead of time to give those cues meaning and so on. It's very similar with the animals. Is it logical that dance is so much fun? Who cares? It is. And training can be that much fun. But you know what? In general, a folk dance was not as much fun to me as a freestyle dance was. Once you mastered the basics of the folk dance, it was so much more interesting and fulfilling and beautiful to be able to create new movement, new understanding, new expression that's unique to that situation. So I started this out by saying that if you are not teaching your animals perception modification, if you are not teaching them vocabulary and concepts that you're leaving a lot of money on the table as far as your effectiveness of as a trainer. But you know what else? You're leaving a lot of the joy of what we do on the table. You are robbing yourself of the opportunity to experience absolute bliss with the animals we work with. I mean, it's so much fun to interact on a fluid level. So much fun. Okay, that's it for me tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you so much. I've had a lot of help from people recently sharing the podcast. Gosh, thank you. That helps tremendously. So, and thank you for all the new subscriptions too. We're on the way, and I hope that I can talk with more and more of you directly. If you'd like to be on a podcast, say it in the comments. Love to talk. I love to talk to all trainers. Like to know what's going on with you. And if you've got ideas and so on, maybe we could talk about it. All right, take care, and we'll see you next time.